you guys know what we do. It's to make America constitutional again. However, there's a wave coming where we're actually seeing truth permeate. Make America states again. How do we do it? What's the blueprint? We got Dr. Joe on today. He's going to mesmerize you with some things that we should have already known, but obviously we weren't taught. Find out all this and more on Self-Evident Podcast, y'all.
Hola, mi amigos.
What's up?
You got Mike. You got Massey. All right, Self-Evident Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We got an awesome show today, and you're going to want to stay tuned because I have the feeling that this conversation is going to go in fun places, unexpected places. But before we do that, do not forget to go to theselfevidenttruth.com, get yourself some merch, get a shirt. We're both wearing shirts. We got them on. We got resources, we got books, we got all kinds of stuff. Church Liberated, that is coming out very, very soon, so keep your eyes peeled. We are just finishing up some pieces on it, and we will get that out the door for you. No events coming on right now. I think that's most of it. What else do we have? So as you guys are coming in, as you guys are connecting with us, first off, we just want to say thank you. Thank you to all of you. Thank you for everything you do. Your support, your encouragement, your prayers, it helps. And we're really grateful for that. And we're excited for the new year. We're excited for the plans we've got. And so as we round out this year, we're taking some time to just reflect and be thankful for everything the Lord has done, what he's given, what he's provided. And I hope that you guys get that chance too, especially with the holidays. And I know if the in-laws are coming into town, then, you know, maybe it's heavy work that you have to do for Thanksgiving and or Christmas. But I hope you get a chance to just sit back, relax a little bit, reflect on what the Lord has done. And obviously the big picture, everything's crazy right now. It's all chaotic, but when isn't it? And if we get totally focused on all of that and we're missing out on those small little moments, life isn't quite as rich. And you can very quickly fall down that hole into just consumed with all of the drama of world and life. And I think it's so important, especially during this season, to focus in on what is actually important. God, and family.
All of it.
And nation, you know.
Well, but it starts at home. Like,
right.
if we're not self-governed at home, we're not going to be able to govern a nation. I think that's really the issue here, is really understanding self-government, what that looks like, what's our responsibility in the governments and the things that we've been given, right? And how much authority we're giving to other people to do for us what we should be doing for ourselves. Mm-hmm. Really, this is a question of, does the government have sovereign authority over its people? Is that what it was designed to do? Now, monarchs have tried this, oligarchies, of course, but Mike's right. It's really about what are we making an effect and an impact. Next year, when you see the tour, we're already doubling where we're going to be. So many youth events. I'm really excited about this. So many youth events are calling now because civics is actually coming alive again. People want to know, is this true or not? And all the places we go to, seeing these kids of different backgrounds, different races, obviously different experiences, because I get a lot of the questions, you know, especially about the slavery stuff. But you really talk about, okay, all that aside, what is your sovereignty? What does that look like, right? And we're talking about state sovereignty today in a lot of ways with Dr. Joe Wolverton. We'll get him on in a minute. But again, go to theselfevidenttruth.com. You also want to get some merch. Look at our merch. Mike, show that shirt there, dog. Show that shirt there, dog. Look at that shirt. Look at that shirt. You guys can pick one up on the website. Helps us out, you know, do what we do. Get a hat, whatever you want. We got our year-end newsletter. So if you guys have not seen that, go ahead and sign up on the email list. And you guys can see what we're doing next year and how you guys, ways that you guys can help. But it's time. I feel like Michael Buffer. It's time. I wonder if he's laughing in the green room right now.
It's probably like,
it's time.
What Bush League show did I get myself invested in?
What the heck is this? I just want to say first, I respect people who have invested the time to learn and to really come out with the pure heart and say, we can change this, but not by authority, not by force. It literally has to be an inculcation of the mind and heart. John Adams talked about that. So I'm going to introduce to you Dr. Joe Wolverton. He's a constitutional law scholar, an author, and an educator. He's got a significant focus on philosophical roots of American government and the framing and the form of the U.S. Constitution, much like we do, and intended form and function of federalism and the Founding Fathers' philosophies. He's a prolific writer. He's written 4 books. He also is with the John Birch Society as a constitutional law scholar. Definitely public engagement. He's always on X and something on Instagram. He's always engaging the crowds. He's definitely, what I love is he's really not a right or left. He's just a truth teller. This is what's true. It doesn't matter if right or left. This is the truth about the Constitution and what authority is. He's a defender of the constitutional originalism and an educator on the principles that were foundational to the United States. Everybody, welcome Dr. Joe Wolverton.
Thank you.
Are you kidding?
Thank
you.
Encore, do you want more?
Merch.
Yeah, I know. I decided to go get rocked. I had to bring the Make America States Again hat on for everybody. Yeah.
You got to flip that screen though, man. It's backwards. It says
America,
America,
it's not backwards on mine, man. My
cool.
camera says it's flipped. I must not have it.
No worries.
It must
No
be
worries, man.
double flipped it, man. It double flipped it, just like me back in when I was in the Olympics in gymnastics doing my double flip. Famous for that.
Yo, I'm all about that mess, what you just said, but I ain't never done no gymnastics, dog.
No,
I ain't doing none of that mess.
It's like that movie. You ever see that movie, Pitch Perfect, where that girl, like, she had to run away from the cops, and the lady's like, "You've been doing your cardio?" He's like, "How much cardio have you done?" She's like, "You just saw it." That's like me. My wife's like, "Did you do your exercise today?" I'm like, "Girl, you just saw me walk from the kitchen to the couch."
Yeah.
"Yes, ma'am. I've done my exercise today. Let's go."
Yeah, no doubt. Well, Dr. Joe, man, it's a pleasure. I've been following you for quite some time on your feeds and all those things, and it's just so similarly minded how we are. And I noticed that if you're a Republican, you'll get a lot of the accolades, and if you're not, and you challenge the Republicanism, or I should say modern Republicanism or liberalism, you are kind of shafted. You're not really known, and that's okay. That's what the prophets were. We're going to keep doing what we do. But
that's right.
I'm excited because you wrote a book called Article 5, and it didn't come in on time. Forgive me for that. But I already know what you're going to talk about because I've just done so much homework. But your premise, and there's the book right there. You guys can get it on Amazon. It's $19.99, and please do a review on it as well. It's a really, I'm excited for this topic because to me, interposition is such an important word that's not taught, and it's actually shied away from any kind of political circle. You don't really hear about it. Maybe a few talk about it up there. Maybe a Thomas Massey would. Maybe Rand Paul. But you don't really hear that. And I know it's not a popular word, but I just want to go down this line with you of Make America States Again. And I kind of want to get your brain right now. Just kind of give us an overview of what you're doing.
Well, it started with, we have to do something, like we were talking for the show. You got to fix what's wrong. And boy, there's a really long arc, brother, that I could tell you. But as far as Make America States Again, it happened that I was reading in the Federalist Papers. I was teaching a class on the Federalist Papers. And I would every right before class, I would reread, or not right before, but you know what I mean, before class, I would reread whatever it was I was going to be talking about. And I was reading Federalist 46. Actually, it was 45 and 46. I was reading them together. And I was reading 46, and I was like, man, a couple of things struck me about James Madison. First of all, he had a lot of faith in Americans' ability to remain virtuous. I myself do not have that faith. I felt bad because I'm like, little Jimmy, that's what his friends call him, little Jimmy. I'm like, I feel you, little Jimmy. You're a good guy. You make the mistake of thinking everybody's going to be like you. There's never going to be a Madison musical because my man was faithful to his wife. He never got in duels. There's never going to be, Lin-Manuel Miranda never going to be writing raps about James Madison because he was
got too much virtue.
Too much virtue. He's like, I don't have any fodder here, man. What are we going to talk about? Brother was faithful. It's all right. I was like, what are you going to do? No one going to be singing that, man. You got to have 15-minute
play. He did well.
Exactly. He did the right thing. Yeah. So anyway, he had in Federalist 46, he goes on, and I should say background, he's sort of answering Patrick Henry. Patrick Henry was chosen to go to the Constitutional Convention, and he said, "Oh no, not finna go up there because we don't need it." And he refused. And James Madison was always going, but Patrick Henry began working against this the convention because, as he said famously, "I smell a rat." Right? That's Patrick Henry's famous quotation. I smell a rat. And so James Madison writes Federalist 46 as sort of a response. and saying, Patrick, I feel you. I know history like you do. And I know, because Patrick Henry said, you show me a society that exists today that has retained its virtue, its republicanism, all of this. And James Madison said, well, we're going to be different. In 46, he starts it out. We're going to be different. And then he says, look, for the sake of inquiry, let's imagine that what you're saying is true, Patrick, and Americans allow the federal government to become tyrannical. Not only do they allow it to become tyrannical, but they feed the beast. They're constantly feeding the beast. He's like, let's assume, says Matt, because he doesn't believe it'll happen, because he says right underneath, he's like, and that's why I called my book, What Degree of Madness? The book, What Degree of Madness, that I wrote, which is, one of those things, it just blew up because, like you say, people are ready to hear a different solution. And it's basically me explaining Federalist 46 in contemporary language, how we do this in reality, not just philosophically, but how we do it. And so James Madison says, what degree of madness, how crazy in modern parlance, how crazy do you think Americans would be to not only allow the federal government to obliterate the sovereignty of the states, but then to begin taking the property and liberty of the people and the people not rise up? How that'll never happen. He says, but, and most famous, right? But, never, like in the scriptures, nevertheless, here we go, this powerful word, right?
Yeah, man. I like
nevertheless. I cannot lie. So he says, however, like, let's imagine that it happened. He's like, here are 6 things that, although they will never happen, will be indicative that the American people are headed straight for absolute enslavement, that they cannot sustain liberty. Those 6 things, just spoiler alert, I won't go through all of them. We blew through those things. Easily blew through. I mean, we just blew right past them.
Yeah,
right?
aren't we practicing some like 25 of the 27 injuries now?
Oh, my
in the
goodness.
Declaration?
Yeah. Oh, you put the Declaration. Oh, absolutely. I wrote an article about that. I'm like, come on.
Yeah, we're like,
if they had to, I mean, seriously, if they had lived, we would think that we today in 2024 would think that living under the government under King George, we would think we were the freest people on earth. We'd be like, good night. This is awesome. What happened? Yeah, we fought a war. Why did you fight a war? This is great. To us, we'd be like, this is a great government. Why are we fighting? But anyway.
Yeah, what's wrong?
So Madison, he says, these 6 things you'll never do. Well, we blew by them. It included things like the people of the United States will never elect members of the state governments who would betray the sovereignty of the states. Okay, okay, boomer.
Okay,
so
boomer.
Proto boomer. And
oh no.
And then we have, they would never allow a what did he call it? Expansive military complex to be established in this country. They would never allow the state militias to be subsumed into a federal force, a consolidated force. They would never allow they would never elect men to federal office who would betray their oath of office. I mean, one after another of these things we blew right through. And then Madison, being Madison, because my man, I mean, he was the smartest man in the room, no matter what room he was in, period. And so Madison says, these 6 things Americans will never do. Then he says again, however, let's assume they do.
Yeah.
Let's walk down this road together and let's say you wake up in a dystopian America where all of this has happened. And he says, here's how you can undo it. And that, when I read that, because I used to read it philosophically, but then I was reading it for that class, and the Lord, seriously was the Lord, put that on me to say, hey, pay attention to this. You're constantly pointing out the problems, but Mr. Madison has given you a solution. And I'm like, dang, it's true. And so then I started to particularly highlight the solutions.
That's awesome.
And that's what I did in the book. So I took the book, the first half of the book, I said, here's the problems that Mr. Madison presented that we blew right through. But here are the solutions that he said are ready and at hand. And you can do that. And we still have all the solutions. We're not bereft of any of the weapons that he identified in the arsenal of Americans. We still have all these weapons. It's just a matter of can we use them? Are we ready to use them? Do
Do you
we
think?
know how to use them?
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think though too? It has a lot to do with, yes, we have them, but people operate out of a place. I'm going to go on a trail, and then I'll bring it back. But
Come on.
people today operate out of a place of, thank you, we need to elect this guy because then I'll have my rights back. Whereas our
Hmm.
founders said our rights have existed, we're not giving them up. You violated them. They operated from a place of, I'm already free. What are you talking about? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
they didn't give themselves room to say someone took away my rights. You understand? It was like, does that make sense? What my
Yeah.
question or
No, yeah.
my theory? It's
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
when I read this, like going through Federalist 46, he even said, "Let a regular army full of equal resources of the country be formed, and let it be entirely the devotion of the federal government." Still, it would not be going too far to say that
There
the
you
state
go.
governments with the people on their side would be able to repel the danger.
There you go.
But
He said, we're not like Europe. He said, in
yeah,
Europe, the people have been pretty much disarmed, or they are way outgunned by the military. He said, in America, the men of the states, the men of the several states are all armed. We just got finished with a war. All the men ages 14 to, 65 are all armed, and they way outnumber the federal force, and they are defending their property, their home, their family. There's no way a federal force could overrun them, he says. And we're still armed. We still outnumber the army. The problem is we've been taught that it's it's not right to form militias, that militias are some sort of crackpot right wing thing that you do, if if you're not well in the head. But and that blows my mind because the Second Amendment, let me put it, I know that my screen is flipped, but my first thing I did when I got hired by the John Birch Society was we made new pocket constitutions. Now you can get these at shopjbs.org, and it's the Declaration and the Constitution. And I wrote a little intro to it, and it's in there. And this was the only pocket constitution that has the actual name of the document on the cover. Everyone else says the Constitution of the United States. It's the Constitution for the United States, which is a big difference if you start getting into it. But anyway, everybody sleeps on the first phrase of the Second Amendment, right? That without a militia, we cannot be free.
Mm.
Everybody sleeps on. We like to talk about the right to keep and bear arms, and heck, I'm there with you. But what about that militia? Without the militias, we can't be free.
Yeah.
Well,
Being necessary. Yeah.
here we are. It's necessary to remain free to have these militias. And so Madison laid it out. Man, first of all, you've got armed people. You've got the ability, he says, to coordinate, to communicate, right? Communicate with like-minded people. Let people know. It, as the good book says, it becomes every man who's been warned to warn his neighbor.
That's right.
Right. And I think that's a big deal. It's like when you know something, and this actually, I got so tired of hearing people that I would teach this class to say, you should write this down. You should write a book. So finally I just did, because they're like, you can sell this book and people can learn, and you can actually have a chance to make a difference. Because guys, I mean, when it comes down to it, and my heart, and people that know me know the number one thing for me is, as James Madison, who is my personal hero, James Madison said, right? He graduated from Princeton, graduated in 2 years, a 4-year degree in 2 years, right? Didn't skip any classes, didn't skip any exams, did 4 years in 2 years. He got finished, and his friend Billy wrote him and said, hey man, what are you going to do? You could be anything. He's like, James, your whole life, man. Or he actually did call him Jimmy. He's like, Jimmy, your whole life is in front of you, brother. And James Madison, in his typical way, now this is we're talking a 19-year-old James Madison, 20-year-old James Madison. He writes, yeah, I guess I could do a lot of things. Law, I could go into the clergy, because he had family heavy into the clergy. He was named after a member of his family that was in the clergy, the Reverend James Madison. Actually, his dad was named after the Reverend. James was named after his dad. But anyway, he said, I could do any of these things. He said, but the thing that matters, Billy, is that no matter what I do, I make sure that my name is etched in the annals of heaven. Because nothing I do on earth will matter if my name gets erased from the book of life. Wow. And that is the kind of guy that I want to be. No matter what I do, no matter what happens, so long as, we recognize the only king is Christ. And as long as we recognize that we are brothers and sisters and we can help each other and carry out the Great Commission, but also the two great commandments, And that's my whole thing. And all of this political stuff, to me, and may sound a little trite, a little cheesy to people, but for me, my goal is when Jesus sets his foot on this country, he sets his foot on a free country.
Mm-hmm.
I
Same.
want him to get here, and it's like that verse in Acts where he says, Jesus finally found a place where he could lay his head and rest.
That's right. Yep.
I
Same.
want my house to be a place where he doesn't have to come in and be like, all right, man, let me square you away. I want him to come in and be like, hey,
Same,
you know
dude.
what? I'm comfortable here. Let me take a little rest. I've been up to, been wielding my, the fateful lightning of my terrible swift sword for a while, been trampling out some vintage. I need to rest a little bit, Joey. Can I catch a couple Z's in your house? I'm like, yes, Savior, you can rest here. That's my whole goal. And so with the Make America States again, it just, I mean, guys, it just occurred to me that I was like, this really can work. Like, this
Mm-hmm.
isn't just some philosophy. My man lays it out. And I know it's in like 18th century language. So that's why I put it like in contemporary language. I said, all right, let me explain to people what it means to have repugnance. Because that's one of the first things he says. There needs to be repugnance of the people. Well, today we use words meaning different things. Like, I don't know, are y'all King James guys? What are you? We were talking Bible editions. What are we looking at?
Man, I grew up King James, memorized a lot of the King James. I'm NASB, King James.
Okay.
Sometimes I use a little of the NLT. It's
A
more of a
little bit.
devotional.
Yeah. Well, like in King James, you read King James, and I think y'all might have saw the other day. I always encourage people to study their ancestors so they know the noble people, the good people. And I think on Instagram, I put how my 11th great grandfather was one of the translators of the King James Bible, and so I grew up King James as well. And you know how some of the words that they use in the early 1600s don't quite mean the same today,
Right.
right? They don't quite mean the same thing. And so that's the same with 18th century English. When James Madison's writing this, repugnant to him had a different meaning, right? And so what I did is I'm going to say, okay, let's define this. And then when I did this, I had people from all over say, oh my gosh, man, how do we do this in practice? And so then that just started snowballing with me saying,
Sure.
okay, how would we do this? And number one is there has to be, as he called it, general correspondence.
Mm.
That is to say, people in different states, me, the three of us here in this room, we have to work together,
Right.
right? We have to work together for that goal of reestablishing liberty to this country. Because everybody likes to say, oh, we're too far gone. Dude, we haven't done one of the things in Madison's list to repair the thing yet.
I will say that's a very lazy and intellectually soft take too. When people say that stuff, it's because they've never really set forth to put
Yeah,
responsibility into
there
taking it
you go.
back.
There
But
you
the
go.
second thing too is it's not only intellectually responsible, but they don't even realize what we just broke free from 200 years ago, where they had standing armies in their freaking cities. We don't even have that right now. I mean, some would consider police, but they're not out there like coming into my
Right.
home and being
Yeah, they're not
horrid.
at the corner like patting you
Yeah,
down
man.
and
So
stuff.
like it's
Yeah.
it's actually not just intellectually dishonest, but spiritually dishonest because I think a lot of it is when you know your responsibility. And I think that's why people shy away from it. Is
Yeah.
I have to be
Oh,
responsible now. Do you know what I mean?
absolutely. It's the accountability, man. That's what we don't want, that accountability. That's the thing that makes people shy away from a lot of difficult things is, first of all, we doubt ourselves, and I can understand that. Even the Savior in Gethsemane was like, I don't want to do this. This is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. Uh, Praise though that he saw it
Yeah.
through and everything.
Put his
But
flesh
even
down. Yeah.
yeah, we have the example of our Savior. He's like, "Ooh, this is a lot more than I thought." So it's okay to feel that about yourself, but then you just push through. You ask him for help, and you push through, and you can do that. And we all can do it. It's just a matter of, as Shakespeare said, screw your courage to the sticking point. Get to that point where nothing can dislodge you from this mission. And if you see it as a crusade, brother, I tell you, as a man, being born, I was born in 1969. I'm super old, but I never, I didn't get to have any crusade, man. And so a crusade to save my people, to save this country, that's a real deal. that's
Totally.
not that's not just pie in the sky philosophy, or it's not gritty retail politics. This is like, we can get this done, and we can get it done in a way pleasing to the King of America, and he who sees us, will reward us, and he will prosper the right. And that's what I tell people at all the time when they're like, what hope do you have? I have the hope that Abraham have. I have the hope beyond hope. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
He was 100-year-old man, and Isaac hadn't come along yet. but he had hope beyond hope. And so I have hope beyond hope. And I know that if we are doing these things and doing them in the right way, that God will prosper us. He will fight our battle. That's not just him saying that philosophically or to make you feel good, champ. God will literally fight your battles for you. You know, yeah. I mean, you know what I'm saying. He's not like your t-ball instructor. He's like, don't run to third base next time, buddy. Run this other way. That kind of thing. And so I really believe that.
Let's lay this out, and then we'll go through each point a little bit deeper. So how would you turn it around? What does Madison lay out for us as kind of that step by step of like, okay, you've hit all of these points that are insane. This will never happen. Crazy world. Oh crap!
But in case it does,
but if it does,
in case of emergency, what's
there you go, perfect.
What's the
dang it? I should have made that the cover of the book, dude.
What?
That is brilliant. Breaking case of emergency. That'd be, and have like a little picture of a constitution inside the case.
Heck yeah,
dude. Trademark. Don't steal that from me, boys. No, I'm
gonna put that on a shirt
for real though. Oh, dude. See, this is the problem. You get
this is what we're here for.
That's what we're here for. To make each other billionaires and
capitalism.
Yes,
capitalism, baby. The free market. So, first thing he said is, you've got to open up communication. You've got to identify other people in the other states who feel likewise, because you want to make sure it's not just you and it's not just something particular to your area, or you want to make sure that this really is something tyrannical. Really is the federal government going habitually beyond the boundaries of its authority. So open up lines of communication. So, at the time of the War for Independence, they had the committees of safety, the committees of correspondence. I believe, my own belief is that the John Birch Society has that. We have these chapters all over the country, and if we were working them the right way, they could be these committees of correspondence and committees of safety. So his first thing is, you got to start talking to people. And we live, guys, in a time where, Instagram, X, we can communicate quickly. We can communicate, anything we want to communicate, and we can find people who feel like we do, who believe like we do.
Yeah.
So the first thing is we got to communicate with other people. And the second thing we've got to sound general signals of alarm. Basically, that's a way of saying we got to tell people what's wrong, because a lot of people, like you said at the opening, they're involuntarily ignorant. They've been taught wrong, as I was taught wrong in school.
Caveat to that. I've been studying on, I was just talking to Mike about this earlier, that whole Hosea 4:6, my people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge, King James.
Ooh.
But he actually says right after that, because you have rejected knowledge, I've rejected you, my priest. He wasn't saying it to the people, he was saying to the priests. You lack the knowledge for not teaching them. He was holding them more accountable. So he's actually holding us who know more accountable than the people themselves, in a sense. Yes, obviously judgment came, but it's because our pastors, our preachers, our prophets, he said, weren't teaching the truth. And your prophets were locked in step with what you wanted. You know what I mean? And you're seeing that a lot today. So.
Yeah, I mean, and that's exactly right. There are most of our people, and this is what I find, and does give me that hope, is I can't count the number of people that I have been able to contact through TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook and X who are like, I've never heard this stuff before.
I know.
This is so strange to me. Where did you get that? I was speaking, guys, this is what, and it'll never cease to, it will always amaze me, but it shouldn't. Let me put it that way. I was talking to a lady really, really active in state Republican politics. I mean, politically active like nobody's business. Like this, she eats and breathes this stuff. And she was asking me about my book, What Degree of Madness? And she said, and I got to talking. She said, what can I do to like a 5-minute, if I wanted to give someone a 5-minute homework assignment to get them on track? I said, have them read the Virginia and Kentucky resolutions. And she's like, hold on, let me write that down. And I'm like, no, just like Madison and Jefferson's Virginia. What are those? Oof. This lady was in her 70s and was politically active, had never heard of it.
Right.
I said, well, first assignment is you got to read them yourself, because you can't preach what you don't know. And so I'm like, go home and read them yourself. And so it's so funny that when I mention these things in my head, I think every patriot, every constitutionalist will know these certain key things that they should have read, and they don't. So the general signal of alarm to me is quit thinking that everybody knows this stuff, right? And get this stuff out there. And that in the appendix to What Degree of Madness, I appended like Kentucky and Virginia resolutions, uh, John Taylor of Caroline's essay on the Union, what it meant, uh, and so general signals of alarm, right? And then he said, then you have to identify governors. So he called them executives. So you identify governors who refuse to be puppets of the federal tyrannical empire. You've got to identify those men and elect them to the governor's mansions. And so that's our next step. We got to identify. And this is the thing, man, where I get real deep into it. Plato, the philosopher Plato, said, if the best people in a republic don't serve in positions of political authority, then you'll end up being governed by the worst among you. And so I think we have a little bit of that now, because it's like James Madison, right after the Constitution was ratified, and James Monroe decided to challenge him for office. And Thomas Jefferson wrote him a letter and said, hey, Jimmy, you got to get down here, man. This little James Monroe is going to challenge you. And he's like, you got to get down here and campaign. And Madison's like, I don't campaign. And he's like, you have to. And he's like, I don't do that. He's like, the last person you want to give power to is someone asking you for power. And he's like, if the people of my district think I'm the best guy, have them write my name down, right? If they don't, they don't. So finally, he was convinced to go around with James Monroe in the same stagecoach around their district and appearing together, giving speeches together about the Constitution. We would never, can you imagine? But we don't have people like that today. You know what I'm saying?
No.
We don't have, but that did make me think some, though. Y'all just gonna have to run with me here. This is how my mind works. But Massey, when you were saying that about the youth and everything, I'm like, these youth camps or whatever that y'all are doing, I'm like, dude, that's right there. That's my language right there.
I'm already on it, bro.
We get those kids, man. We get those kids. Because the book I wrote, The Founder's Recipe, is all about the 37 men most often quoted by the founding generation. And I bet most of the time people recognize 4 of the names. And it's like, what? And that, that's shocking. So we got to find the right governor. And the governor, Madison said, will have to frown. Mm-hmm. The governor will have to frown. In other words, you have to, this is my vision. Want to walk with me on Uncle Joey's vision of the good governor?
Uncle Joey,
come with story time with Uncle Joey.
Podcast for you, bro. Uncle Joe's podcast. Uncle Joe's Constitution. Uncle Joe's Constitution Hour.
I picture a train flying through space.
Oh, that'd be lovely. Like a soul train.
Engineer.
I picture like a soul train. Love, peace, and soul. So this is the thing I imagine is we would have a governor call a press conference, and there's his podium, right? Got the little seal of the state of Tennessee where I live. Where do y'all live, by the way? Where are y'all?
Florida.
Florida. Okay. So same thing. You got the seal there. The governor stands up there and he says, just call this press conference, let y'all know that we got this aid check from the federal government. Now, in order to take this aid check, we're going to have to let them set the curriculum for our elementary schools. But look, I know the government not great at education, but look at this check, y'all. Look at how many zeros in this thing.
I mean, we can do.
We can do some good, man. We can educate. We can get Chromebooks for everyone. Heck, we can get iPads. We can go straight Apple. We're gonna go straight Apple in this business. We're gonna leave them Chromebooks for the poors in other states who don't take the money. And then he's gonna stand there at the podium and he's gonna rip up the check, push the podium over, and just eyeball the camera. And just say, we don't want none of that. We'll take care of our kids.
That's right.
And that's what he meant. That's what Madison said. We got to have governors like that.
That are willing to frown.
Yeah, the word he uses, frown. But I mean, that sounds a little twee now, doesn't it? The governor's got to get up there.
No. I just keep thinking about, like I said, I remember as King James, but like even like 1 Corinthians 16.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
He said, stand on guard. Stand on guard. Be on guard, stand firm, quit you like men. The word quit today means something completely different than back then.
Oh, so look at that.
All those, like when you say frown, I know what you're saying because I read these things all the time. I'm like, I know what he's saying. You know what I mean?
You got to frown. The next thing we got to do, he said, we got to let state legislators who will use every legislative weapon that they have to prevent the unconstitutional act from being enforced on the people. Now, here, the governors and the state legislature, now, the communicating with each other, that's on us. We've dropped that ball big style. But we could pick it up easy, right? We can easily do that. Electing governors that will frown, electing state legislators that will use every legislative and he says the word, to embarrass the federal government. The state legislators should use their sovereign political legislative authority to embarrass the federal government's attempts to impose tyranny. Now, can you imagine that? You have the Senate and House of, the state legislature of Tennessee pass a bill doing nothing more, saying nothing more than, here is the laundry list of unconstitutional things that DC tried to impose on us. This is all unconstitutional. Everyone who voted for these things in DC put their hand on the Bible and swore to God to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. They are now blasphemers and they are now traitors. And in Tennessee, we will treat them as such.
Come on.
Can you imagine?
Just the shockwave that would send.
Yeah, exactly. The shockwave. Just people, even people on the left, be like, "What did that Yahoo just say?
Well,
Did he just call them blasphemers?"
When we've seen states step up against the federal government looks like they've got egg on their face,
Oh, yeah.
and you could just picture kind of a 5-year-old temper tantrum of,
Yep.
You're not going to listen to me. And
that's how they act about it.
Exactly. And I know we've talked about repeatedly of, people, well, how can states stand up against federal government? Stop being blackmailed with your own money, because what they'll do is they'll take your money and then they'll offer it back to you. And they say, now you can take this check. However, you're going to have to play ball with us. And you need those governors that are willing to, like you said, rip up that check and then point the finger back and say, no, I'm not doing what you're trying to get me to do, and I'm going to do what you're telling me I can't do.
Truth.
Because I'm being constitutional. You're not. And having those governors and state legislatures who are willing to take that bluster and that
100.
heat from the
There
federal
you go.
government.
There you go.
And plus that gives morale for the people. When a people of a state,
Right.
their elected officials are defending them against encroachment by the federal government. Now, you always get those crazy crackpots that just want federal government over everything.
Yeah.
But the people in general go, finally, I've got people at the state level who are got my back, protecting
Yeah, and
me.
it's like y'all said at the top. It's not a right or left issue. This is a freedom or slavery issue.
Yeah, actually, the two sides have made everything slavery and tribalistic. It really is.
Precisely, because we can point them out. We can say, look at this, and then just say, look, you want to call us a Christian nation? I mean, some of y'all, it'd be hard to tell. It's like one of those things. If you ever got charged with being a Christian, would there be enough evidence to convict you? That kind of thing.
Right.
It's like, I don't see enough evidence to convict us of being a Christian country, but let's just put that aside. We got every one of these people putting their hand on the Bible, swearing to God, bringing God as a witness of their lies.
And it shows that authority structure. We're swearing to him who holds us accountable. They don't even realize they're making an oath to the God of heaven.
Dude, by the time they got there, there's a guy in the Founder's Recipe. I know I'm all over the place. Just follow me, man. If you go in the Founder's Recipe, there's a guy.
Like this Joe Rogan 3-hour podcast.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Dude, you know how bad I wish there were like more than that. I mean, Rogan does it. I'm serious. I mean, he's like the only guy. And sometimes Rogan, I'm like, yeah, I could take you or leave it. But I grew up in the days of like Crossfire and stuff with Pat Buchanan sitting there with William F. Buckley talking for 5 hours about stuff. That was mother's milk to me, so I get behind the 3-hour podcast. But you go to this guy, go to Samuel Pufendorf in my book, The Founder's Recipe.
Yep.
And he makes a big statement there about oaths of office, where he says, you need to realize something, political figure. You need to realize that when you swear an oath, you are bringing God as a witness to whatever you're swearing to, and God will not be mocked. Dude, let us get one guy, man. One guy who'll push the podium over. One state legislator who will list it and call them out as blasphemers and traitors.
Yep.
One guy. And so this is also at hand. Now, Madison says we must all refuse to cooperate with federal overreach. Now, man, come on now. I'm just saying we
I like
all
it.
must refuse to cooperate. That puts, again, that's accountability, pushing the onus back on us, where we have the obligation, because we can't preserve, protect, and defend a document we don't know.
Right.
And when it comes to Constitution, we need to know it like we wrote it, because every day it's getting obliterated through regulation and legislatively. It's getting obliterated. And not only that, we in our day, unlike our fathers in 1776, in our day, we're not just fighting a war, right? A political war. We're fighting a spiritual war.
That's
Fortunately
exactly
for
what it
them,
is.
they weren't fighting a spiritual war then, because people pretty much had it locked down. But we are fighting a war on two fronts: a physical political war and a spiritual war for the salvation of the soul of this country. And so we've got to really have these things on lock. And man, let me tell you something. I think it was you, Massey, who said at the top about, y'all were talking about, you can't, you got to find a man who can govern his family, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
You got to
self-government.
have
Yeah.
that in that Founder's Recipe book under Hugo Grotius, who wrote a commentary on the Bible in Latin. If y'all read Latin, you need to get on. It's available like on archive.org. Hugo Grotius commentary on the Bible in Latin, but blow your mind. But anyway, Hugo Grotius said, if a man cannot govern a country if he cannot govern a city. He can't govern a city unless he can govern his home, and he cannot govern his home unless he can govern himself. That's the standard that we have to apply to these people.
That's
What does
biblical.
it's totally biblical. Oh, totally biblical. Can what does it say? Is it Timothy where it says about the bishop,
Yep,
right?
about the bishops. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
you
nailed
go.
it.
Yeah. And so we have to have that approach to our elected officials. Let's look at how he governs his family, how he governs himself. I mean, it's a thing that I really do think, being American, we received the lion's share of blessings when it came down to it, man. We were blessed to be born here. God chose us for that. He knows what does it say? He knows the measure of the habitations of his people. He sent us here. And I think we'll be sitting down one day with the Savior face to face, just two people in that room, you and the Lord. And he's going to say, look, man, here's the long laundry list of advantages I gave you when I sent you down there. Let's see what you did with those
Yeah,
advantages.
what did you do? And Mike and I talk about this frequently, Mike, and I kind of want you to comment on this. That it's really hard when when we do a podcast on, just going with the name here, Robert Morris, bam.
Oh, there you
Like
go.
the views shoot up.
Yeah.
You talk about Make America States. Oh, we got to be responsible. Dang. I'll watch it later. You know what I mean? And I know you kind of have trouble with that because he has another group called The Forge, and he does things for making men again. That's kind of his
Oh, nice. Oh, I like
bailiwick.
that.
Yeah,
Who does that? Who's
Mike
that?
here. Mike
Oh,
does.
wow, Mike.
Yeah.
Good
So
job,
he was.
buddy. Yeah.
He's kind of he speaks with us too, but like he does his own. But his
you.
contention is self-government, and it's really what the premise of your book and all the work studies. It's self-government. And I know, like for you, it's a big issue. But what do we do, Mike, in a society? And I want you to kind of chime in too. But like in a society what are our choices, right? Like we're trying to get it back, but
Right. And I think part of the big problem on all of this is how easy it is to put the blame and responsibility on somebody else, right? And Massey and I we've kicked some hornets' nests, and we were talking
that's to say it.
before we went live about Trump and all of that, and there's ingrained in so many human beings this need for a savior. Obviously, Christ is our savior, but there is individual responsibility that is vital to this whole process. And I think I think there were blessings through the whole COVID thing. And I think one of the COVID blessings was that people started to wake back up of like, oh, wait, I have to actually take charge in my own life. I have to actually be responsible for stuff. I can't just place all responsibility on the federal government and they're going to take care of me, because someday they may actually be my enemy. And
there you go.
And so I think as people are waking up to this concept of they may not be on their way to help you. You may have to take care of yourself. How do you do that? And I think that's such a major step in this whole process is the culture, the society of America having this renaissance of what it means to be a rugged individualist in America. I don't know if you think
I like
the same,
it.
different.
No, brother, you speaking my language. In fact, I was just talking the other day. They were having me run down because I'm writing a bunch of books right now, and one of them is so I took the Founder's Recipe guys and I took all their writings and I went through it and took out all the statements that they made regarding the effects of effeminacy on a republic. Dude, that book is, everyone, I mean, one of them, talking about Grotius, he wrote in one of his books, Grotius said, when you have young men, excuse me, who worry more about what they wear and if they sound cool than they do about their virtue, then you're done for. Right. And you look today, our young men, oh my gosh, you've got young men wearing feminine clothes. You've got the effeminacy is crazy. So Mike, doing that job, and good on you, man. And I'll help you in any way I can, because we've got to make masculinity toxic again. We've got to really do that. We've got to make it where you're a little bit of afraid of a guy. You got to be a little bit afraid of a guy, because you got to be able to have that monster. You've got to have it before you can unleash it. And that's what I think about so many of the people that would be patriots that want to, they're always talking about rah, let's go topple the government. I'm like, brother, I don't know that you could topple your mayor. And you don't have like a mayor, with an army and a drone. I'm like, we got to get squared away. So
you got to wipe the Cheeto dust off your fingers before you can, do a little bit of that. Yeah, take on a government. A
little Mo cardio, right? Yeah, we gotta get busy on that. But I think that's really important, and all of them, say that. All of them are talking about effeminacy. There's one by DeVotto. I won't bug you with all these quotations, but there's one by DeVotto, brother, that says something like, the effeminacy of your people is the step right before the enslavement of your people.
Yeah.
Right. You've got to, go ahead.
I want you to
go ahead.
Say that.
Go ahead.
As soon as we get off air, you said you're writing this book?
Yeah. I'm writing it right now.
Okay. As soon as you're finished, I want a copy.
Yeah.
Because this is I was
actually going to say
so beneficial for me.
I have quotes about that because I wanted to see if I could put it in like a class. When I do my classes or talks, I have like slideshows of everything.
Right.
And so like I wanted to talk about what is it that made men, right? And then effeminate, because it was kind of birthed like what you talk about a lot, but it's like the effeminacy that smokes America, and it's tolerated and accepted, and it's almost praised. It's almost like the more effeminate you can become. You actually did a blog on this on our website about being too vulnerable. Like it's not wrong to like hold things in and be okay with that. You don't need to share it with everybody and sound like a little, thing.
No, that's one thing that is very much in that. There's a essay that Algernon Sidney wrote called "Of Love" that really nobody's ever heard about. Even people that know Sidney don't know this essay. I have it right here behind me somewhere. He wrote an essay called "Of Love," and in that he says that he's like, one of the things we got to realize, there's a chasm of difference between masculine love and feminine love, and you've got to figure out, you got to early on recognize that true femininity will only be attracted to true masculinity. Oof. And you've got to have that sorted out. If you expect to have eternal, and he says, he's like, if you expect to have eternal love, you can't have that kind of true Christian partnership with your wife. She won't be as feminine as she should be if you're not as masculine as you should be. And that's a key to it. But back to the weapons that we have, a couple of them, first of all, we've got to refuse to cooperate, and that's a big deal. Draw up the plans of resistance. Now that's a big deal. We've got to actually plan this business. And I think that's very biblical as well. I think that, one of my great heroes is Joshua, and planning things was a big deal. Let's plan this. Let's carry this out. Let's have a plan for how we're going to get from A to B. And I think that's an important thing, and something that we don't do a lot today. We don't do a lot of actual planning of carrying out something and following through. I say in my classes that I teach that unfortunately we live in a time, or yeah, fortunately, I guess you could say it the other way to say it more optimistically. Fortunately, our founding fathers lived at a time before the excuse factories were built. Because today, man, there's an excuse factory on every corner, and there's one right. Daddy didn't hug me. Mom didn't say she loved me. My 10th great grandfather was a slave. Whatever it was, you've got an excuse ready for you, man. Right? And so we live at that time, but we've got to get past that. Draw up plans of resistance. Why don't the like-minded people say, "Hey, man, let's take care. Let's focus on one thing, and let's really just hammer that thing out of existence. Draw up the plan of resistance." Something he says that really gets me. The next thing he says is, we should have one spirit to animate and conduct the whole. But to get to that place, you guys are doing, the Lord's work. To get to that place, again, it comes back to education. If we want one spirit to animate and conduct all of us who are trying to restore liberty, there's a lot we've got to do in the space
Yeah.
of education. Like you talk about, Mike, with the forge, with making men masculine again. We need women, taking their role from Titus and teaching younger women, how to be homemakers, how to be mothers, how to be wives.
Right.
We need all of that needs to be done. And that one spirit has to animate, meaning give life to and conduct everything we think. Because if we're thinking of self-aggrandizement, then guess what? The Lord's tapping out. He's not going to help us.
Right.
We've got to have this one spirit, and that spirit's got to be restore liberty, right? And if we could get there, again, I really do think we can. I think we live in an era. You guys are doing it. I'm trying to do it. We've got a bunch of people. Unfortunately, we're sitting in a situation. We're kind of like the anti-federalists of our day. There's a whole lot of us. A whole lot of us are really smart and saying a lot of brilliant things and prophesying things that will surely come to pass, but we're not very organized in doing it. And that was the problem with the anti-federalists. They were brilliant. They wrote wonderful things. They were 100% right in what they predicted, but they didn't win, so to speak, because they weren't organized. And
I
so
like
this
that.
this one spirit, one spirit to animate and conduct the whole. And basically, if you're not on board with it, do your thing. But as my dad used to say, lead, follow, or get out the way.
Yeah.
Right.
I will
And
say
that's the thing.
John
If you're
Adams
not going to be
actually
with us, you're against us. Go ahead, Mr.
John
Sal.
Adams once wrote, I can't remember what paper it was. I actually have it on one of my slides, but he said it's up to the clergy to accommodate their discourses to the times. He talks
Yep.
about to rebuke the sins that are out there, like avarice and ambition. And he said also for them to inculcate the spirit of liberty. So like he said, it was actually up to the
Ooh.
clergymen to say we need to inculcate the spirit that revives us, right? And one of the things I'm
Oh
seeing
my
today is
gosh, yes.
one of the things I'm seeing today is, and I was telling Mike about it, I actually kind of shed a tear about this. It's built on this premise that Trump will fix a lot of things, but still there's something about that's going on in the air right now. It's like, man, if we can build on this spirit right now of like America, it's like, dang, we got something. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. And I agree with you. I think we're sitting on sort of one of those fulcrums of history. They say that the history turns the doors of history turn on very small fulcrums. And I think we're sitting there right now. We're at a
Same.
place where we have the opportunity because there are people looking around for the first time. There are
Yep.
people there are people wondering about religion who for decades never gave it a second thought it was silly. And now they're saying, now I hear them say, confessing Jesus as their savior online. And I'm like, whoa. So even though they may not all be sincere, they might influence someone who really does have who is sincerely seeking for those things. And so,
Truth.
yeah, I think that, but what's so bad about what you said that just struck me, Massey, that's so sad is that, we're so much, uh, you know, citizens of Babylon that we have preachers, rather than getting up and denouncing the despotism, denouncing the immorality, they get up and say things like, well, we can't say anything that's political and we'll lose our tax exempt.
Yeah, which is the reason we're almost finished with this book. It's taken me a minute, but it's called Church Liberated. It's directly to
Ooh,
pastors and Christians. The whole idea was, like you, a lot of people were telling me, you got to put this stuff in a book. And I'm like, this is simple
yeah, yeah,
principles.
yeah. Yeah,
But
well,
really, I was a pastor for 6 years, associate pastor at our church. I just stepped down because we're traveling so much more. But I'm still a pastor there. I'm ordained there and whatever.
right.
But I'm noticing everywhere I go with pastors, that's the one thing. It's like, I want to, but isn't it this? Isn't it that? And I'm like writing these things out. Mike helped with several chapters on what the clergy can do, actually what it was meant to do freely before God. But it's
Yeah.
that thing. And it's like, I think a lot of pastors aren't not wanting to. They don't know how to. So, because I meet
That's
so
probably
many of
true.
them behind closed, they're like Nicodemus, right? Coming to Jesus at
Yeah, there
night.
we go. Yeah.
And they're like, well, dude, I want to, but like
How do,
how,
yeah.
and how are my people going to receive it? And it's like, well, that's not up to you. It's up to you to tell the truth. It's not up to you to keep your people. If they're led by the Holy Ghost, they'll stay by the Holy Ghost. You know what I mean? And so we got to be
That's
open for that.
perfect. That's a perfect way to say it, because when he says this one spirit to animate all of you, that's what he's talking about, what you just said. If they're not with you, if they abandon you, they weren't animated by that one spirit, let them go.
Oof.
We don't want them.
And even with the whole thing, because I want to have you back on to talk about. I thought we would cover it, but we didn't. The Convention of States. It's
Oh, yeah,
always bothered me. It's always bothered me.
It's a danger. It's a danger for sure.
It's a danger, really. And so I know you'd written a little bit about it, and you talk about it. You even kind of poked at the Convention of States people. Like, some people are going to get pissed at me for this, but they don't understand that it's good to have the spirit. I don't want to rebuke them and saying they're wrong. It's good to have that spirit of we need change. That's great.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
The problem is you're trying to do it by yourselves with unelected delegates, not the Senate and not the Congress, the way Article 5 says to. And it's like that's the scary thing, that there's no check and balance. And I want to say to you too, man, like with this stuff here, I just put it up on our feed, all these steps and more. I'd love to talk to you more about how you can, I don't know, like I want to go with you, and I want you to come with us and just go preach.
Let's do
man.
it. Yeah,
I
let's.
think-
I'm always looking for people like that. You'd be surprised. Like I said, the excuse factories are cranking out excuses 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I am literally waste and wear out my life bringing to light hidden things of darkness. That's what I'm doing. Right?
Yeah, you're just like 40 years ahead of me in brainium.
Nah, I don't know about that, man.
Well, no, I mean, because you studied it, right? You
I mean,
were a
that's the
teacher. You
truth.
know these things. I don't look at us down. I'm not downplaying us. But we're just two citizens, a Mexican and a white dude, who are like, we need to figure this out.
Hey,
And
I'm
it's
part
like,
Mexican. Not
Amen.
really, but I live there, and so I speak. Everybody always, I speak
adopted.
fluent Spanish, so everybody's like,
But
"Yeah,
nobody,
you're half Mexican."
yeah, nobody taught me this stuff, bro. Like it bothered me. I got a video from America's Original Intent from Dave Barton, VHS, years ago. And that's what spurred me onto this stuff. I'm like, wait a minute. I didn't know. And so being Hispanic, my parents are immigrants. Nobody taught me this,
Nice.
And so now I'm like, the older I get, the more I'm like freedom and liberty and sovereignty.
Yeah,
and there's got to be a balance of where men are moral, because what did John Adams say? Our Constitution was only made for moral religious people. And the biggest issue we're facing is we're not a moral people trying to do constitutional liberty-minded things. Can't
Dude,
do it.
that pornography is eating us alive, brother.
Sure is, dude. And I went through that for 2 years, and it's an open story of mine that you cannot have liberty in your home, your church,
No, sir.
your city. If you're in secret
sir.
sin like that, it'll destroy you, and you'll take a bribe because someone like Hoover, we were talking about J. Edgar, had all them,
Yeah,
all
man.
that stuff on people, man. They will get you, and the enemy will get you, and you won't
And when
be
you
able to
think
fight with power.
it was created by our father's enemy for the purpose of destroying our father's children.
Right.
I mean, you got to think about it like that, and it's the great scourge of our time. I want to say one last thing though about
Yes.
the Make America States Again. The last thing that he said,
I'm sorry. Yep. Point 8.
and he put it last because I think he wanted to leave this hanging in the air to show the type of man he was. He said at the end of, I guess I could read it right from him. I have it here. He said, "The same combinations of states against federal encroachments on state authority would result from an apprehension of the federal as was produced by the dread of a foreign yoke. And unless the projected innovations, the unconstitutional acts of the federal government, are voluntarily renounced by that government, then the same appeal to a trial of force would be made in the case of a domestic tyrant as was made in the case of a British tyrant."
Ooh.
In other words, if y'all ain't gonna play ball at the end of the day, we got our weapons.
Mm-hmm.
And we will fight an American despot with the same ferocity that we fought against a British despot.
I hate this because I get emotional thinking about it. like the war stuff's never scared me. One of the things we've been preaching for years, and it just really started to catch on, is if God did it once, He can do it again. You know, if the Lord did it once, He can do it again. I have hope in that. That Lord, there are more than 7,000 that haven't bowed the knee to Baal.
That haven't, but
There are
that's
millions
dude.
of
Come
us.
on now.
We're praying, we're seeking. Lord, we want this. I believe God is on our side. I believe He wants liberty more than we do, because He
Where
loves
the
us more.
Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty.
That's exactly right. And so, like, there is this inculcation of, if it comes down to that, which I don't want it to, the bloodshed stuff.
No.
I will say this. What is it? Washington said. He said, if our cause is just as I most religiously believe it to be, the same providence who afforded us at the beginning will now go on to afford its aid. It's actually one of my favorite things that, was that him or was that Franklin? I think it was Franklin. So I'm believing God for what you just said. I understand that's our last resort, but Lord, protect us in that moment, right? That there's this, here we are, just a bunch of people, kids who were never taught this stuff, right? And I'm calling you a kid, bro, because we're kids.
Hey, we're kids too. Yeah, I mean,
we are
kids when it comes to understanding things. Yeah, we're all babes in our mother's arms.
But I'm looking at you and Mike and myself, especially. This guy is a genius. Every idea I have about, hey, let's do this course. He does all the research with me, but he's insane. But like, just having the brain of, I'm studying the founders. I haven't even really touched yet. I mean, I have, but what they studied, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
that's the thing.
What's like wisdom.
That's what made me. I'm like, where did they? The first thing that got me, man, was I was reading the Federalist Papers, and I remember there's a footnote to Abbe de Mobley. Now everybody just reads over that, but me, Joey being Joey, I'm like, who in the heck is Abbe de Mobley? And then I did a thing. My professor said, hey, why don't you take the Federalist Papers, look at the index, and write down all the stuff you don't know? Dude, I practically just took that the end, just ripped it out and handed it back to him, right? Because there was so much I didn't know. Dude, James, the number of times he mentions the Amphictyonic Council, and we just glide over. It's like one of my professors used to call it Teflon reading, right? Just slides off you, right?
Yeah.
You don't know what Amphictyonic is, just Teflon that business, just let it slide off. And so that's what got me to the Founder's Recipe. Was I'm like, who are these people that they keep talking about? And then when you find out nobody knows, even my American history professor was like, I've never heard that name before.
Yeah.
And you're like, dude, if we want to do what they did, we got to read what they read.
That's where I think too, the church as a whole, and this is in no way a rebuke. It's a challenge. It's not a rebuke. It's a challenge.
That's a good way to put it.
Because rebukes come very easy these days. People yell and scream.
Ain't that true, man?
A challenge is more important. That if you don't know your word, you don't have the weapons of warfare. Same thing with our Constitution. Same thing with the founders and what they read. If we don't know it, we can't fight. It's just at this point, you talked about it earlier. We operate from a place of defeat instead of a place of victory.
Yes.
God already gave me my rights. God already gave me the authority and power. I'm already sovereign because of Him. I don't care what you say. And that there's something about that resistance to tyranny is obedience to God thing that Knox said. That's the real deal, bro. It's in our hearts. It's in our DNA. That's why people love justice. It's in our DNA. Yeah. There's something God put in me that's real and righteous. And I want to say thank you, man, for what you do.
Hey, and right back at you. You guys really just made my day. I love talking to people that can talk, that can talk these kind of things without having to hedge yourself in. You know, don't get religious or don't get the, it's always like one or the other, man. You guys bring it all together, and I love it, man. I love it so much. Appreciate y'all. And I just, as a matter of fact, just emailed you, Massey. Mike, I didn't have your email contact, but I emailed you, Massey, the presentation, the keynote presentation I do on Make America States Again. So maybe you can find some good stuff in that where I listed out there.
I'm excited, man. I actually have a class that I'm doing this year on state authority for civics. When I go to the kids, though, there's some other things I'm going to probably pick your brain on, too, just kind of give me some, if I'm on the right track. But go ahead, Mike. You were going to say something. I'm sorry, bro.
No, I was just going to say that we appreciate talking to you as well. It's because we get that too. Oh, you should swing more this way, or you should swing more that way. And sometimes it's just fun to let the doors open and start talking about it. Because
just open the kimono.
Mike. We're just going to talk about the way that we see it. And guess what? Each aspect is important, especially the spiritual.
Well, particularly when you're, when you talk about the spirit will, is the teacher. The spirit will teach all things that we need to know. And sitting here. sitting here, I've been taking notes because you guys have taught me things that I want to, think about. So I'm like,
Amen.
yeah, we're all, if we're in tune with that spirit, he will use us as an instrument for the will of God. And I think that that's important to always be aware of, man. And you
Amen.
guys do, and I'm expecting y'all to contact me so we can go around and get some
Oh,
presentations
buddy.
out there, do some stuff, man.
Buddy, listen,
Yeah.
I'm already thinking, okay,
All
how
right,
can we
man.
do this? But I will say, why don't you have your Article 5 on Audible, bro? That's like my thing right now.
Oh, that's funny because just a couple days ago, the guy was like, "Okay, we need to get you," because I have a little studio here, and he's like, let's get What Degree of Madness and Article 5 on Audible." And so, yeah, I'm definitely going to do that, man.
Heck yeah.
All
I'll
right.
just read it myself.
You should. Dude,
Yeah.
I appreciate you. We'll have you back on because I think there's so much more to this that we're
Yes,
not
sir.
covering yet.
Yes,
But
sir.
this is that whole idea of almost like a subsection of our podcast, like the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. I'm going to talk about them both. And if men are angels, we wouldn't need a government. The Anti-Federalists, if the Federalists were like men aren't angels, we need a government. So there's this really cool dichotomy that I love about those guys that they had. And I think, again, if we can teach people just the basics, they'll understand why we preserve and fight, why we do what we do, and why it's important.
Yeah,
And so
I'm right. I've got a new collection of Anti-Federalist papers that I wrote the introduction and a little book called How to Read the Anti-Federalist. That'll be coming out in 2025 that I'm pretty much finished with right now, but that'll be coming out
what
in
don't you do,
2025.
bro?
Love it.
This guy's
Dude,
got
that's
it
all, man. That's all. You got to, man. I got to be able to say that I left it all in the field
I got it. Hey,
when
so
the whistle blows.
one quick word. Let's end this. Give a word to our people, to our listeners, to like if there's something you want to leave them with, what would that be?
The thing that I always want people to end when I've spoken to them is I want them to two things. Number one, commit themselves to finding men of wisdom and virtue and honor to elect to political office. Do not settle. There are men, virtuous, honorable, wise men among us. And if you don't find them, maybe it's because it's you. So look for those men, wise, because when the wicked rule, the people mourn. And the second thing I would say is none of this is possible without first squaring away your personal virtue. There is no liberty without virtue, and there is no virtue without Christ. So get yourself squared away with the Lord. And if we all pull in that direction, we'll get this thing done. And someday, we'll hear those words, right? Well done, thou good and faithful servant.
Come on. Yeah. Well, brother, I appreciate you. Stay on because I want to talk to you in the green room here. But guys, if you've not gone yet to theselfevidenttruth.com, you got to do so. Also go to, what is it, jbs.org?
jbs.org.
jbs.org,
yes, sir.
man. There's some really cool stuff on there. I've followed John Birch for a long time, especially as a young preacher, a young speaker.
Nice.
And I'm so excited, man, to have you on, and we'll have you on again. And
Ready
I
for it.
just look forward to brotherhood here. So guys,
Yes,
again,
sir.
go to theselfevidenttruth.com, sign up for our year newsletter. We got some new merch. Look for the Black Friday sale coming up. Because we got some different stuff out there. And we'll have some new shirts next year. You're going to see a whole new wardrobe coming out, resistance to tyrants, obedience to God, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth, all those things. You're going to see some really new, cool things that we have, and then some. So, guys, we're looking forward to next year. We already got almost, we're already so booked up into 2025. We want to double what we did this year, and I think we can do it. It's going to be a lot of work, but I don't think we need to, like Mike said, we don't need to take our foot off the gas. We need to keep moving. And it's really where we're at. We have to keep our foot on the gas. We've got to go educate. While the people are animated, let's go get them. The fields are ripe for the harvest, and we have a job to do because he that wins souls is wise, it says. So, we have a job to do. So, guys, again, go to our website, sign up. If not, we will see you on Monday.